When it comes to your cruise ship vacation, what is arguably one of the biggest and most important decisions you will ever make prior to even boarding the cruise ship is deciding which cabin you would like to stay in during your cruise. When deciding on the surface level, you have a couple options ranging from an inside cabin, an ocean view cabin, balcony cabin, or a suite. From there, you decide the location of the cabin. Will it be in the front or forward part of the ship, the middle or midship, or the back of the ship, aka the aft? And then after that, you decide if you want to be in the higher decks or the lower decks. These decisions can ultimately and potentially make or break your ultimate cruise experience. Honestly, there is a lot of mumbo jumbo details and little giblets in deciding which cabin you are going to pick, and at the end of the day, it does come down to personal preference. However, in this video, we are still going to go over the specifics as far as location and talk about the most undesirable cabins that you should avoid at all costs. And I mean this quite literally because money is involved, and well, if you pick the wrong cabin, it could potentially be a waste of money. The first cabin that you should avoid are cabins located in the front or forward part of the ship. This applies to people that specifically get things like motion and seasickness. They haven't exactly got their sea legs as of yet. When it comes to these positions, yes, even on a new cruise ship, the stabilizers can only do so much. Because what happens whenever a ship is at sea and you happen to encounter some inclement weather, then well, the ship is going to do kind of like a teeter-totter effect. This will cause the front part of the ship to get the brunt of the ups and downs and backs and forth of the waves. Even in the back of the ship, it is not going to be as dramatic as the forward part of the ship. Don't get me wrong, personally for me, it doesn't bother me at all, but another worry that you could potentially run into while staying in the forward part of the ship is the sound of the anchor. If you happen to be at a port where you are tendering, the minute you hear that anchor drop first thing in the morning, it sounds like a train coming through. However, let's also keep it real here. There are some sailors and passengers out there that don't mind the motion of the ocean. They're too busy partying and bed wrestling to even feel any type of inclement weather that's going on. Either that or you are simply going to sleep like a baby, like I did when I stayed in a forward cabin on board the world's largest cruise ship, Wonder of the Seas. Even when we encounter some inclement weather, well, it didn't bother me because I don't get seasick. You should avoid cabins near the nightclub or the entertainment zones. This is specifically going to be for people that go to sleep early, the people that aren't exactly the night owls, the party goers, and even if you're in areas where there is entertainment going on, such as like an arcade or a theater, and well, you're going to hear lots of screaming and yelling and loud sounds all throughout the night that could potentially disrupt your cruising experience. Just keep in mind, guys, all this does come down to personal preference. I'm somebody that's at a nightclub pretty much every night when I'm on board the ship. It doesn't really bother me. However, there are those nights that I do like to sleep in, or maybe I had a hangover the day before and I want to be in a quiet place. These are just cabins that you should avoid if you are not a hardcore party goer, or if the loud noise could potentially disrupt your sleeping cycle. Next, we have the obstructed view cabins. Now, these type of cabins are infamous because they tend to sneak up on a lot of people that aren't aware of obstructed view cabins. These are the ones that, well, obviously your view is obstructed if you have an ocean view, balcony, or even a suite on board. You see, there will either be a piece of the ship or most likely a lifeboat in the way, obstructing your view and not giving you that beautiful, perfect view of the ship that you might have been hoping for on your cruise if you didn't expect it. Now, believe it or not, when I was on a brand new ship known as the NCL Prima, I was in a $20,000 suite. Well, not me, I didn't stay in one of those suites. I had a friend that was nice and gracious enough to show me the room, and for their $20,000 room, they had an obstructed view by way of a giant slide right next to their balcony. For me, that would have been a little much considering the price that you paid. First world problems, either way, it can be problematic for people that didn't expect it. However, when it does come to obstructed views, they can work out in your benefit. Why? Because obstructed viewed rooms can typically be a lot cheaper than the regular ocean view or balconies that don't have an obstructed view. On the flip side of that, there are people that don't know what an obstructed view is, and they don't exactly look at the deck plan for the cruise ship, and they don't look into what they're exactly getting for their cabin. Some people may book something known as a guaranteed cabin, in which they are looking for the best possible deal, regardless of the location. So in theory, they could get a guaranteed balcony cabin. Little do they know, they won't find out until they get on board that they are unfortunately dealing with an obstructed view, and there is a giant lifeboat right in their face, not giving them the ideal view that they expect expected of the 7 Cs. You also want to avoid cabins near the elevators. This one in particular, and just like the rest of the locations that I'm naming here in this video, can be seen as either a pro or a con, glass half empty or half full, because you could be near an elevator and you're somebody that is in and out of your cabin all the time. You have a short trip to get to the elevator. However, on the flip side of that, on the con section, you could be dealing with loud people in and out of the elevator, a lot of footsteps, a lot of traffic going into those areas. And because these elevators are going up and down, the walls can be a lot thinner and you can hear everything that's going on potentially on other decks, like shows and stuff of that nature. So for a lot of people, near an elevator may not be the most desirable location. You also may want to avoid cabins above or near the casinos for obvious reasons. There are people left and right winning all kinds of jackpots. There are people losing a fortune and they're crying their eyes out. And if you hear that from your cabin, then well, it may not be the best of times or the best sleep for you while you are on board the ship. And keep in mind, when it comes to the casino, typically when the nightclub gets out, those areas get more packed because obviously at sea, the casinos are open a lot longer than the nightclub. So you're talking about screaming and shouting that you'll be hearing potentially up until anywhere between 4, 5, or 6 in the morning, which for most people is not a good thing. You'll also want to avoid cabins under the pool deck. I know this from personal experience, like many of these cabin locations I'm talking about in this video. You see in the pool deck, obviously you have a lot more kids, you have activities, you have restaurants. There's so much going on that's going to cause a lot of noise. So let's say you want to take a nap in the middle of the day, or you want to stay in your cabin, look out on the balcony, watch a movie, anything of that nature, then you more than likely won't have that opportunity if you are staying in a cabin under the pool. Believe it or not, even during the evening hours, you may potentially not be safe. On a lot of cruise lines, they are starting to extend the pool hours and hot tub hours till 11, sometimes midnight, even later in some cases. And aside from that, there could be cleaning going on in which there are all types of machinery. And again, it could potentially create a undesirable night for you when you are trying to get some rest on board the cruise ship. Another cabin that you should avoid at all costs are the crew cabins or the employee cabins. This mainly applies to people that are working on board cruise ships. However, there is the potential for a passenger to also stay in one of these accommodations that aren't exactly so favorable. These cabins do range anywhere from shared cabins where you can have up to 2 to 3 people per room. Gone are the days when you would see 4, 5, and 6 people per cabin. However, you could potentially end up with a roommate that isn't exactly going to be your best friend. You don't get along and you fight all the time. It's just not fun. You also have solo cabins. For example, when I worked for Norwegian, I had what's known as a Jack and Jill cabin. I had my own very tiny room and I had a shared bathroom, whereas we call the toilet. It's a combination of a shower and toilet right next to each other, and it's disgusting. It wasn't the best or worst for crew cabins, but we do make it work. You also have something known as a petty officer and a officer cabin. However, those are typically allocated to the officers or high-ranking crew members on board and the passengers. Passengers, believe it or not, can stay in these cabins by having a friend that is a crew member. When you have the opportunity to stay in this type of accommodation, you typically are going to pay a lot less, close to nothing, whenever you go have your cruise experience. It could range from you paying nothing except for the port fees and taxes, or paying as little as $10 to maybe $20 per day during your cruise. But the problem is, if you stay there as a passenger and you're staying with a friend that's a crew member, well, that place is going to have a lot of problems. You see, it's going to be near an area known as the I-95 here in America. It's the largest area on the ship that stretches the entirety of the ship. There are all types of crates and machinery being moved. There's going to be crew members yelling all over the place because there are a lot of crew members that are working through all hours of the day, prepping your food and entertainment and rehearsals and everything else in between that. So even if you save some money, let's just say that sleeping may potentially be hard to come by for you as a passenger with an experience that you may not exactly be accustomed to if you've never worked on a cruise ship. Now, I know it all probably sounds bad. There is no good location on a cruise ship, so where in the heck are we supposed to go? Well, have no fear. The most desirable place on a cruise ship, from what I've gathered, is typically in the middle, aka midship, and somewhere in the middle of the decks. That way you are typically away away from the theater, you are away from the pool, and you're not too low to where all of the festivities and cookies and cake and everything else that's going on board the ship is actually taking place. Like I said, also keep in mind that there are pros and cons to every single one of these locations. What may seem like a bad location to you may be a great location to me. I don't mind being near the nightclub since I am there every night, and it depends on the ship when it comes to the pool deck because typically the pool deck leads to the buffet, and I like to be near my food and festivities. It's simple. At the end of the day, it will always come down to personal preference. But I do have to ask, what is your favorite location on board a cruise ship to stay in to get the ultimate experience? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And by the way, if you guys want to book a cruise ship experience unlike any other, make sure you check out our travel agent sponsor and partner touring plans, and they will make sure you have the vacation of a lifetime and make sure you don't get stuck in any of these undesirable locations on board a cruise ship. I appreciate all of you. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see all of you later. Take it easy.